Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Bundesliga Show, VfB Champions League match reaction. Before we get into anything, just want to introduce the guys. Got Travis and Ted tuning in from VfB Americana. Chaps, thank you for doing this with me. I need the support because that wasn't supposed to happen, was it?
We need a group hug of some kind to get through this, Ted. I don't know about you, but I'm hurting a little bit.
Big time. Yes. It's nice to know that we're not alone in this. Misery loves company.
Yeah, it does. And Ted, your debut on the Bundesliga show is on the back of this result. We've done 4 of these. Travis, this is your 3rd appearance. I did one on my own after the 5-1 Red Star game. We've not had quiet games to review. Welcome. Not the welcome we wanted, though.
It's good to be here. It's an inauspicious start, but it's great to finally be here.
Excellent, top man. Well, what we'll do is a bit of a debrief as to the game itself, the hooks and crooks of it. Big moments in it. We can definitely talk about some key moments, particularly in the first half. I know the scoreline looks damaging, and it was a damaging game, but there were certainly some moments in the first half we can reflect on. Then we'll do a bit of a VfB Champions League group stage journey / debrief and anything else. Do let us know. Any VfB fans out there watching live, do get involved and share in our pain whilst we get stuck into it. Just off the. If we just talk about the football itself first, because there's lots of stuff I want to ask you both about the performance, the mentality, everything else like that. But straight away, Travis, that Atakan pass that leads to the corner, that leads to the first goal. We talked last week about how we needed to be Slovan levels of performance, but better. That's not the way that we wanted to start, was it?
It's almost like we were Slovan this week and they were VfB. It surprised me I had watched the PSG match last week against Man City, and I was like, oh boy, these guys they're the real deal. They're fast. But when you add in what just seemed to me a kind of lackluster, almost lead-footed performance from the guys in white and red, it just everybody from in the crowd as well at the beginning just seemed not quite into it and ready to go. It kind of reminded me, Ted, of those matches when Pellegrino was the manager, and we would always start slow, 5-10 minutes, and then we'd let up a goal, and then we'd eventually get into the match. And it really surprised me because how much everybody was talking up this match, how much it seemed they put this on their calendar. So I was kind of surprised at how slow we looked, how PSG was just in our face. We couldn't build up anything, and how we didn't really seem to respond like we're kind of used to the crowd responding and also the guys responding. I was just kind of surprised that this was our last performance in the Champions League. So it's not just the result that's disappointing. It's kind of how we got into this match. It's also disappointing.
Yeah, it was a hell of a death rattle. Speed definitely was one of the things that caught me. I think you're spot on with that. The other thing, just more generally and holistically about this match, was you could absolutely tell one of these teams is very used to being on this stage and used to competing and advancing in this tournament. And the other team looked like they hadn't been in the competition in 15 years. That's players play, our guys just looked tight and nervous, whether it was like too much time spent on the ball, and they did PSG, give them credit, like they did a fantastic job of collapsing on our guys who were taking too much time on the ball, who weren't able to do one-touch passes and forcing us into mistakes. And you're absolutely right. That Ada pass just seemed like a harbinger of things to come. Like not a usual. He's such a steady hand normally, and so it was super concerning when he plays that one out of bounds. It was just like, oh, here we go.
And it's not like it was a pass that he slightly misplaced. Like, he misplaced it by a mile, and that is just indicative, no doubt, of the nerves that were just flowing through this team. And exactly what you said, Ted. It just feels that very, very sadly, and I went through a range of emotions throughout the 90 minutes. And I'm sure the players also did. But yeah, it just seemed like a team so emotionally charged up, and they played the occasion and not the match, sadly. And yeah, if we advance the game a little bit, it looks like, I can't say it looks like we were half settling down, but of course we looked like we could also get in behind PSG. So some shoots of confidence or potential in the match. And so probably the biggest moment of the game, it happens in the first half, where we get in behind and we get a chance creation. And I believe it was Furyk who had the effort. That's well saved by Donnarumma. And lo and behold, PSG very skillfully go on the break at pace with the VfB midfield's axis not in place, the fullback's not in place, because we've just been at the other end, and quite clinically and rightly score a second goal, ruled out initially for offside, but unfortunately, as soon as I saw the replay, I saw that it was going to be overturned by VAR and given as a goal to make it 2-0. And Travis, I was posting about it a little bit on Blue Sky. That's football at the top level, fine margins, and that's what you get punished for.
I think going back to something that you guys said is how charged up these guys were, and then things immediately went wrong. And you could just see in their body language as that first half was going and nothing was going right. We haven't seen that with this club in a long time, to where they were just, I think for the first time they didn't believe they could really get back into it. And that's not something we're used to with this group. There were moments, like Ted said, where when we did have some one-touch passing, where we had, like, it seemed like an opportunity. And then I think, Roy, you said it well, this is PSG we're playing right now. They could recover. Unless we did everything perfect, they were able to recover. And then how heartbreaking is that, to have that great opportunity and then immediately give up a goal? I think what this game showed is kind of what Ted said, and what the announcer said at the end, is that you had one club who was used to this and one club that is not. I think you had one set of fans that were used to this and one set of fans that was not. I want to shout out the home crowd for doing the knock all der Scheisse chant at the end when the game was over and we all knew we weren't going to advance. I think it was a big learning process. And you saw, I don't know if you guys saw Angelo Stiller at the end of the match. He was welled up. He wasn't sobbing or anything like that, but he had tears because I'm sure he could wipe them away with his new contract. He'll be okay. But it just seemed like all of the issues that we've sort of had, kind of the slow pace with Jeff Chabot or Josh Avagman struggling on switches and things like that. We saw that. And the chance creation, Ted, we just weren't able to get anything past these guys.
Yeah, we had our opportunities. I'll shout out, I think Chris and Jamie had pretty decent games. I mean, this was very much a game that was played on the wings, as I saw it from both sides. And I think what we saw is PSG's got an oiled machine in terms of their ability for the wing backs and wide guys to hand off to their wingers. And we've gone through a lot of churn in those positions in recent years, and there's still a lot of soul searching, I think, on the VfB side of things. Is Jakob Brun-Larsen our starting right wing? Is it Chris? Is it Jamie? Who plays where? And we've seen so much cycling through that there's not the cohesion. And I think what we saw from PSG is like what it looks like when you've got these guys playing really well together. You can bomb down the wing and create an amazing chance. And then if the opposing team counters, still be back in time to defend. I mean, I was amazed. I think it was maybe that Chris chance, or maybe it was the second chance that Chris had at some point. Oh, it was Jamie created a chance down the left-hand side, and we had a break with numbers. And it was like a 3-on-2 for VfB. And then they just forced Jamie or Chris to take an extra touch. And by the time that he made that extra touch, there were 4 defenders back. And they had the numerical advantage. And I think we either didn't put a shot on target, or maybe like put a shot into a defender. And it's just like they were fast. They know how to play this style. And it's something I would love to aspire to. I think VfB kind of does that PSG light, and it's been really exciting and successful in the last year. But we've still got a level up that we could go to.
Yeah, I think you're very much right on that, and that there are levels to aspire to in the Champions League, and let's be very hopeful that we get another good go at it next season. So yeah, obviously the game moves on, and like you said, Travis, the belief did just seem to evaporate very quickly. Obviously the third goal comes from Dembele, obviously down the PSG right flank, on the defensive side of the left for VfB. Good strike at a narrowish angle, maybe not the worst angle ever, and it gets past Bredlow in net. Such a hard situation for Fabian Bredlow to come into. It's a shot to nothing for him, because we were kind of joking around before the game, saying obviously if he ends up being the hero and even keeps it to 1 or whatever, he's the hero, but he's on a hiding to nothing. Can't say he has to. Maybe Nubel gets to maybe the 4th goal, if I'm thinking, but that's being very extreme. Right. In an ideal world, we'd have him in net, but we have to give him credit. I mean, that stop for when PSG should have been 3-0 up was ridiculous. But I mean, also the PSG player should have scored, but it's an unreal stop. So we have to just say fair play. He stepped up, especially at that point, and he did all he could in his power, really.
Yeah, I think Demi was watching the PSG player miss that and going, "Oh, so that's what it's like to miss an open netter like that." I think Fabian Bredlow has shown us that he is why he's on this roster, why he got the contract extension. He is just a really solid backup, and when he has gone in the past, it hasn't been this huge let off. So I was really impressed with him. It was cool he got the opportunity. It's unfortunate, like you said, the opportunity was a 4-1 loss, but I don't hold him responsible for a lot of those. The other guy, Enzo Mio, I thought he played pretty well today for what is, I think, his favorite club, so he was trying to impress a little bit there. But yeah, I think what Fabian Bredlow has shown is that he has a spot on this roster, and he's an important guy, and he's done it over the last few years where he's spot started, and you really haven't missed a beat too much. So, I mean, if we're going to take some positives out of this, Fabian, was one of them. I thought Enzo played, pretty well. I thought what Ted said, Chris and Jamie were solid. Henri looked good when he got back in, towards the end. He didn't make too many mistakes there. So I think there's some positives to pull out of this. I think the announcer mentioned something at halftime. It's like it had to be a pretty quiet locker room for Hoeness to walk into, because Rory, I 100% believe what you're saying is that the belief was gone. And Ted, I wonder if the players and the coaches were scoreboard watching like we were, because it got exciting from the 45th minute to about the 60th minute because of the results in the other matches. And I'm curious how much those guys were paying attention, because I don't know if you heard this when they announced the Milan score, and when Milan had evened that one up and Man City was still down at that point, they announced the score in the stadium, and there was a cheer in the stadium. And I'm curious how much the guys were also paying attention to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, because I was struck, the game seemed completely out of reach already at halftime, but we looked like a completely different team for the first 10 or 15 minutes of that second half. I mean, Hoeness probably did walk into a very quiet and dejected locker room, but he must have given a pretty damn rousing speech, because they came out and it was almost like the tables had turned and we were putting PSG on the back foot. We were, had a lot of the energy that they had. And, it was just, it came down to us not being able to create or at least finish the chances that we created before Dembele gets that fourth and totally puts it out of hand. But yeah, I thought we had a great start to the second half. And if we were able to play with that energy for the entire 90, different sort of match. Hard to do, especially on the back of as many Englische Wochen as we've had. I mean, the game accumulation and the mileage on these guys right now is pretty crazy. And again, like PSG is used to that sort of load management, and I'm sure has the roster, given their financial resources, to manage that. And that's just a luxury that we don't have, with 50+1 and all sorts of other stuff. We don't and never will have an oil daddy.
We've got a French betting provider. Come on, let's go.
There you go, sponsor.
Interesting point on the squad depth, because and maybe a question for us to ponder as to how successfully Hoeness has managed his squad throughout the Champions League journey. There's been moments in matches where he's made important changes that have had a great impact and obviously had to rest and rotate accordingly. Is there anything? Did we have any qualms about the starting lineup, Ted? I mean, I think it was matched up as well as it could be. Was there enough? I think the only thing for me is that if we got into this arm wrestle tit for tat with PSG, attack, we were going to lose. And so me and Mark were talking on the Monday pod, and what he was saying was that he could see Stuttgart going through by it being a kind of tense affair where it's 0-0 for ages, and then you get the belief and then you strike forward, or if you 1-0 down or whatever. So yeah, thoughts on the game plan and setup? Could we have done much different?
Yeah, I don't know that we could have, which feels crazy to say after a 4-1 result that felt like it could have been worse. But aside from the fluke cold for Nubel, it would have been the 11 that I would have expected, and that I think that should have been out there. In retrospect, maybe Chase instead of Chabot, in terms of the pace that he offers. But that said, he's showing off his pace oftentimes because he's been a liability in some cases, giving the ball away or putting himself being out of position and having to recover. And so maybe he wouldn't have offered much upside versus Chabot. So I think Hoeness got the lineup right, noting that his hands are somewhat tied with the rules of the competition and who he has the ability to bring into the starting lineup. And I know we'll get to that a bit later in terms of thoughts about the tournament setup.
Yeah, I think it would have been wild if some of the guys who weren't or not able to be registered, like a Nick Valtemata or a Bruno Larson, who we got so late, had been available, what Sebastian would have done. I agree with Ted. The only big change I could have seen was maybe Jeff Chabot, but that is such a bold roll of the dice. But Henri Chase in there, I think that's more of a risk than reward. I think a lot of us are down on Jeff Chabot, but he shut down a Juventus striker. I think we know him well enough to know that if a team has a striker, Jeff Chabot can just play some great one-on-one, man-on-man defense. Against a team like PSG, though, I think he's exposed a bit, which is okay. He's still a really good defensive player. But yeah, I think Sebastian's hands were tied. This was pretty much the best lineup. In the only time that I can really recall that we have been able to play that defensive bunker ball was when we had a random match. I think it was last year against Dortmund when Anton was out and somebody else was out, and we moved Angelo Stiller back into the center back position. And it worked against, I believe it was Dortmund that it worked against. And then we tried it later in the season against some other club, and we got destroyed. Maybe it was Munich. I don't know if the mentality of this team can play that style. And maybe that's something that you guys are alluding to, is that as Hoeness gets experience, as these players get experience. Fabian Wohlgemuth, I thought, said something really interesting when Angelo Stiller signed his extension, that Stuttgart is becoming a place that players want to go to because of the expectation that they are playing internationally. Now, that's a dangerous double-edged sword, because to pay those players, you have to continue to play internationally. So I think the goal for this club now is not Sven Mislintat's famous 13th as our first place, as any Stuttgart supporter remembers, is finishing in that top 4, preferably, but 6, because we're kind of on this positive roll where you could tell these guys were hungry. They want more of this. But if we slip out of 6, we slip out of 4, does it unravel a little bit. But if we stay in that 4, we stay in that 6, maybe we can get the experience and the guys that can get out of the group stage and move into the knockout stage next year, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, our attention now will turn to the league and the Pokal, of course. But obviously with last season, the fact that the whole way, how well we were playing, and the fact that we always not had this safety bunker, but we always had an inkling that the Bundesliga was going to get the 5th spot, the extra Champions League spot. But that's not happening this year. The Bundesliga's underperformed in Europe. Leipzig, my lord. And all the other sides haven't, they've done enough to qualify. Frankfurt are going well in Europa League, but otherwise it's been very underwhelming. So there is that pressure to, if you want Champions League football, it has to be top 4, which I think is entirely achievable. But yes, like the rest of the game, I'm glad that the lads kept on going. They showed good character. Nice to get the goal at the end. Maybe could have had another odd goal. Again, it was just a case of that final ball not being quite accurate enough, a few chance creations where we weren't tidy enough. And as you alluded to, Ted, it's the pace of PSG that they got back in so well, and they attacked us so well with the pace, which was one thing we were, of course, worried about. So yeah, to finish 4-1, and I'm glad it stayed at 4-1, because when they scored the 4th so early in the second half, you're slightly worried, aren't you? So yeah, I mean, if we would like to just sit back and reflect on what has been, a roller coaster ride of a Champions League campaign, to be involved in the first iteration of this new format has been very interesting as well, and been great fun to be a part of. There's been highs and lows before maybe we start to get into anything too kind of serious. What can we pick out as high moments, Ted? I'll go to you first. High moment of the campaign.
Yeah, I think it's got to be the away win at Juventus, going toe-to-toe with an Italian giant like that and coming out with the win. That stands out. I'll also hark back to the first match of the campaign against Real Madrid, and the fact that we were toe-to-toe with them for 70, 80 minutes in that match. And I think that a 3-1 final scoreline is totally unfair to us and does not reflect how that match went down. So, we may be walking out of this tournament like lambs, but we absolutely came in like lions. And I think there's still a lot to be proud of. Mm-hmm. Did you have a favorite, Travis? Anything different from those?
No, you picked the 2 ones. I think the best. The Real Madrid game, I don't think I've been that excited about a match that really didn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things, considering we had to play relegation playoffs the last couple of years and things like that. I don't think I've been that pumped up and excited for a match in a long time, and to go out on that stage and to show the world that we belong, that was just awesome. If you're talking about disappointing ones, we didn't lose the knockout. We didn't lose our position in the knockout stage today. We lost on October 1st. I was looking back at the stats against the home match against Sparta. That was probably the other match that I was just so excited about, because it was the first home match in just forever. And I really thought we were going to get a result out of that. I mean, our possession was like 70-30. We had 20 shots. I think we had 10 on goal. That's the match where had we gotten the 3 points, we had 12 points. And then, who knows exactly what happens, but we advanced past this stage. So that's where I think our inexperience showed up. And that's probably the biggest shadow, or when the guys look back and reflect on what has been just an amazing run. That home win against Young Boys was just awesome for the home crowd to be able to experience that. That's probably the one they're probably not going to remember today too much, because these matches you tend to just forget about, take the tape and destroy it. It's probably that Sparta one. They're going to be like, if we had just done this or that, we'd be playing another extra round. But I think it's one of those things that 24 hours later, 48 hours later, the guys are going to be super proud of what they did. And I actually am excited to go see the end of the match on Paramount Plus and just see the interaction between the players and the supporters, because I haven't been able to see that yet. Because I think Stuttgart supporters really understand how crazy the last 2 years have been. And while this was a disappointing finish, just the fact we had an opportunity to be here is amazing. So I kind of want to go back and see that and just see kind of the love, because if Angelo Stiller's crying on the sidelines, I can only imagine how supportive the supporters will be, because the guys, we deserve to lose today and we deserve not to make it out. But boy, oh boy, they gave us some really nice memories going forward.
Yeah, 100%. Some lovely moments from the phase that we've been through. Highlights, completely agree with both of them. Disappointing points. I was most shocked by the Red Star game / result, especially being 1-0 up so early on in it, if we can remember back to it. And of course, we were done in by Silas. Of course, it had to be him. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's fair to say, like how you've put it, Travis, we probably didn't deserve to go through. Overall, if you kind of put into context, often you come where you deserve to finish. There are, disappointing moments, but some unreal moments. That Juventus game, 1-0 does not give that justice. We outplayed them all game long and eventually got our winner that way. So just final reflections on the shape of this new Champions League format and what we see in Europe right now. Do we think this 36 behemoth league phase is something beneficial to Stuttgart? For example, if we were in a group of 4 and presumably seeded 4th, I can see us maybe struggling more potentially. So I think this format opened things up more for Stuttgart and other clubs that we've seen do well, like Brest from France and Aston Villa, etc. So Ted, what have you made of it all?
Yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. I think it is good I think it was ideally set up for a team like us this season to go through. So in that sense, I'm disappointed that we didn't, because we did have a lot of winnable matches. Travis is absolutely right about the Sparta Prague one. So that bit was frustrating, because to your point, Rory, we would have been 4th place seeded 4th in a potentially tough group. So this was maybe an easier route for us to get out. I did like how many more opponents we got to play instead of having the home and away. I mean, it was really exciting to have was it 8 matches? I've forgotten it all at this point already. But 8 matches against 8 different opponents, that was super cool. For the VfB fans who got to travel, I mean, I was texting with Ollie, who came over to Austin a couple of Novembers ago, and he went to all 4 of the away matches and had pictures and all sorts of cool stuff. So from the fan perspective, I think it was a really, really cool format. It also, was big. I mean, it lasted a long time. It's a major production. I think there are still some things that we've got to do to dial it in. I mean, I would love to see a rule change as far as the roster construction rules. I understand why they exist and understand that they're meant to help the little guy, but I think in our case, as the little guy, it did us no favors. So I hope that that's something they might revisit going forward. What did you think, Travis?
As a neutral, I'm not going to lie that as a Stuttgart supporter, I haven't paid attention to the Champions League in quite some time. So this is all pretty new to me. I'll say this, as a neutral, this was a great last day. I mean, you had all kinds of clubs that were going in, out, and then because of the situation with the bye, you had a bunch of clubs that still had to play for things. So I thought as a neutral, that was awesome that all these matches mattered. I think from a specific Stuttgart standpoint, it was more positive than negative, as Ted mentioned, but I'll just because I've been so negative this episode, I'll keep it going. The load management was probably pretty tough for a club like ours. I think you did see it with some of the guys like Maxi. He stands out to me of a guy who just looks exhausted. And so I think for a club like ours, having to play all of these competitions and an extra 2 matches, I guess it is, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I think it does start to add up. So maybe that was a downside to it. But as a neutral, who didn't love Man City possibly not making it out? I mean, come on, that would have done the world some good. So yeah, I thought it was more positive, Rory, than negative. You?
Yeah, I did like it. Like you say, last day jeopardy, big fan of seeing the league table just go absolutely crackers. 1 minute, PSG pushing up the league, but I think, Sporting got into it again late on. You saw Zagreb, looks like they were going to have a famous time of it themselves, and they just missed out. Loads of jeopardy in it. Yeah, completely agree. It was really, really exciting to watch. I think, like you say, with little adaptions along the way, I think it can be something that settles in really nicely. And like you said, it's such a behemoth of a tournament now. Like we're talking about Real Madrid feels like last season. It doesn't feel like this season. It feels like so long ago. The Undav equaliser and how well they played. So I think they can absolutely look back fondly and proudly. So very quickly before we finish up, as I'm sure we want to cry into, I'll be crying myself to bed as it's half 10 UK English time. Thoughts about just the lads going forwards? Do we think it's going to be hard for Sebastian and co to pick these lads up for, I think, is it Gladbach at the weekend and then going forward? So what do we reckon to bounce back ability?
I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens this weekend with a Gladbach match. Are these guys going to come out upset and angry and wanting to right the ship, or is there going to be a bit of a hangover? I'm really not sure what we're going to see. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a week or 2 adjustment, getting back into the realization that it's Bundesliga and the Pokal. And then I think Sebastian has shown a really good ability to get the ship righted. So I'll be really interested to see how we do this weekend. But Sebastian Ted has shown the ability to get these guys back on track. I'm not sure which side we'll see this weekend. What about you?
I'm optimistic. I think that he's going to have the boys ready to go. The thing that worries me more than anything mentality-wise is I know we've got someone who's going to be out on yellow card accumulation after the Mainz match, and is that Ada? Or
I believe it's Ada, and
Ada.
Is Jeff Chabot still? Is he available?
Ooh.
Anyway, yeah, it's for sure Ada. You're right. Yeah. It's just Ada.
When either of those 2 midfielders is missing, that always makes me a little bit queasy in terms of our ability to kind of stop things up or advance things through the midfield. So that's what gives me a little bit of heartburn as I look towards that match. But I think that Hoeness will have the guys ready. I think that there's a positive spin to be put on it. And I think we said the same thing when we got bumped out of the Pokal last season. Is like, okay, fine, one less competition to focus on. Like the money would have been nice if we had made it to the knockouts. But there's also, I think for us this season, more benefit to just having fewer matches, fewer things vying for the guys' attention, and they can just purely focus on that top 4 finish in the Bundesliga and hopefully getting into the semifinal of the DFB Pokal.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely, completely agree. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. It's been very nice to chat with you two both and just be able to have a bit of a therapy session on what has ultimately been a disappointing evening for VfB Stuttgart, but ultimately an amazing experience for all the fans and players and the club as a whole. And we very much hope to be back in the top tier of European football next season, and maybe we'll have roles reversed, and maybe we can dump out PSG in Paris or something like that. We shall see. But yeah, just to finish up, then do make sure that you leave a like, comment if you've not been able to watch this show live, and subscribe to the channel. Of course, we're all over social media, so we're on X and Threads, we're on Instagram, we're on Blue Sky, of course, so are the lads, VfB Americana. Make sure you check out their content and their pods. I'm sure there'll be lots of debriefing going on your next episode, chaps. So yeah, thanks all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow for match week. Match week 20. I think we're on now, losing count of the Bundesliga. Mark and Cam will be going live tomorrow evening at 8:00. We'll have fantasy football for you on Friday morning. So busy. Thanks all, and we'll catch you on the other side. Thanks, Travis. Thanks, Ted. It's been great fun.
Thanks a lot, Rory.
Thanks, Rory.